the first 12 years of my life living in Chicago, at which point my family suddenly relocated to the strange new land of Knoxville, Tennessee. This was where my mother served her first call as senior minister at Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. Finding myself in my first wilderness experience, I faced an onslaught of challenges to my religious identity. Every single day at school, I was pressured and taunted for my absence from the Young Life meetings. Kids liked to inform me I would one day burn in hell because earlier that week, my mom's picture had once again graced the front page of the Knoxville News-Sentinel for officiating a gay wedding. Cloaked in discomfort and unease, my days became focused on surviving and dodging the accusations of heresy. But the only way forward was discovering the healing power of revolutionary love. I attended my UU youth group like the way you reach out for a life preserver when you are deep in murky water and you are not ready to drown. Each day I faced a new religiously motivated bully, armed with my chalice necklace and my mountain camp t-shirt, and I soon became one of the youngest and clearest articulators of UU principles and a personal belief system rooted in religious humanism. My commitment to our first UU principle, to honor the worth and dignity of every person, called me to love my faith and use it to shine outward. Every single day at lunch, I womaned the Amnesty International table, asking Knoxville high schoolers for yet another signature to free a political prisoner who was far lonelier than I, trapped in a prison in a faraway land. On International Human Rights Day, I covered the school in Post-it notes emblazoned with stick people, each figure representing a political prisoner across the globe. I interned for the local AIDS service organization and started an AIDS awareness club and a peer sexuality educator program at my school. See, I knew exactly who I was because my UU faith called me to my commitments. I had been lost in the wilderness of religious bullying, and my faith enabled me to bring revolutionary love to my community who needed it, and to find a way to be able to be home there. Around this same time, in the 1990s, that church sold their longtime building and moved to a new property where they constructed the church of their dreams. Now, I remember my adolescent perspective of this wilderness moment. I was petulant. I mean, where will we play sardines? That's like a hide-and-seek game, but more Unitarian. Where will we play sardines, I wanted to know. What will happen with the mural we painted on our youth group wall? I'm sure the adults and the church leaders were filled with their own fears and trepidation as they entered this unknown territory. Does any of this sound familiar at all? But, my friends, the newly constructed church was magnificent. The new stone sanctuary featured a dramatic light scoop behind the pulpit, and words from our seven principles were strategically carved into the stone walls on the building, so that even the architecture reflected our commitments and values. I remember the new building project as a joyful undertaking where we named our wildest dreams together, and ultimately fulfilled many of them. See, it was revolutionary love that met us in the wilderness of not knowing where we were going, and we triumphed abundantly. And our new youth group room even had a really cool pool table. So I hardly remembered what had worried me in the first place. And then, fast forward some years, in the summer of 2008, a man walked into that sanctuary during a children's performance and opened fire on my faith home. And he managed to murder 2 people, but was swiftly confronted and overtaken by a few of the elders in the congregation. What I am telling you is my best friend's dad and the former board chair they walked in front of a semi-automatic weapon and physically charged the shooter. And together, a group of middle-aged men held him down until the police arrived. How did those church leaders in Knoxville summon the moral courage to step in front of bullets? Some of the men had already trained many years ago at the Highlander Center during Freedom Summer. They had marched for peace back in Vietnam and then in Iraq. They sat at lunch counters during Jim Crow. They disobediently crossed the property line at the Oak Ridge nuclear plant. But I wondered, didn't they tire of this perpetual wilderness work? But their UU church was the well to which they returned each week to draw the water of revolutionary love. Their Unitarian Universalist faith acted in them, evidenced by their moral courage, and propelled their response of revolutionary love that day and saved us. The next Sunday, after the shooting, all the former ministers of that congregation returned to Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church to reconsecrate the space. I came over from Asheville, North Carolina, to serve as DRE for the day because the current religious education director was too traumatized to re-enter the building. There were still blood spatters on the pews and bullet holes in the walls of the pristine white sanctuary, evidence that we were bearing the responsibilities and difficulties of our liberation, as Desmond Tutu tells us. I remember sitting huddled with all the teenagers who leaned on each other as if to make a fortress. Only a week ago, that room had been corrupted by terror, hatred, and violent white rage. That day, I was witness to the holy sanctuary being reclaimed by revolutionary love. The powerful revolutionary love flowed over us that day. I mean, we were baptized by it and made new. And it was there in that moment that I received my call out of the wilderness to be a Unitarian minister, to serve this revolutionary love that looks like moral courage when it is activated. So yes, I experienced revolutionary love that way, and it did culminate in my call to ministry. But I have felt it in other ways too, in the same way Irshad Manji experienced in the video. She experiences it as the willingness in the heart to make a mistake and the self-compassion and the resolve to right a wrong. Like Manji, I too have failed, and I have allowed my failure to form a new strategy towards revolutionary love. As a community educator, when I was younger, for an AIDS service organization in Asheville, North Carolina, one of my jobs was to support community leaders living in government-subsidized housing projects to stop the spread of HIV, hepatitis C, and STDs. Now, entering these housing communities was a wilderness experience for me, and I was afraid. My community contact was named Alicia. And here is how I worked with her. I would ring her bell, say hello, drop off my education supplies to her, and get out of there. She often invited me to stay for food or to sit and chat, but I would simply ask for her encounter numbers for my paperwork and told her I needed to get back to the office. And after a few months of this, she called my coworker and asked if he could be her contact instead of me. She told him I didn't seem to care about her, and I didn't know what her community needed. That was a tough moment. To hear that my own fear and my need for comfort was disrespecting her and impacting the health and lives of the people in her neighborhood. That I was perceived as impassive and ineffectual. But there was so much urgency. The rates of HIV were spreading in that community, and none of us could afford me any time to dwell in my own insecurity or need for comfort or need to be hand-holded. So I cooked some food, and I brought it over to her place. I apologized for offending her, and I told her I wanted to get to know her, this time for real. I blocked out no less than 2 hours for our visits, and together we sat and just watched her daytime soaps. I watched her do hair for the other ladies who lived in the housing community and joked with them and got to see a bartering economy in effect. I came over on Saturdays and one of her neighbors hosted a barbecue and just continued to show up as me, sharing my own life struggles or joys with her. I made myself vulnerable to her in an authentic way. And together, we established a trusting and mutual friendship based on the common goal of wanting a healthier community. Eventually, a group of women came to me and said they wanted to start a women's sexual health education and cooking group. I trained them, I got them their supplies, and I got them their funds so they could get to work and educate their own community. My initial failure opened up the path towards revolutionary love. Like Irshad Manji, my embarrassing mistake revealed a new way forward, calling me into deeper commitment to my faith. And 15 years later, that women's education and cooking group still exists at the Hillcrest Apartments. Irshad Manji's early failure to act propelled her to start a global organization devoted to spreading acts of moral courage. You can look it up, moralcourage.org. Because of my experience charting a more loving path out of failure, I am convinced that whatever mistakes we individually or collectively will make, we can be transformed by them, and they can help us live more deeply into our calling. Some of the most profound transformations come out of our compassionate and self-loving analysis of our mistakes. We can love ourselves and love each other into a more authentic solution grounded in revolutionary love. Can we not? Desmond Tutu reminds us liberation requires unity. This is how we will enter the wilderness of our time. We will not be alone. We have seen the old American legacy of white supremacy and violent hatred rear its head again recently in Charlottesville and other cities, and we UUs are going to confront this racism and bigotry with the moral courage and revolutionary love that revealed itself in the congregants in Knoxville 10 years ago. Are you with me? My past wounds from religious prejudice were reopened again this week as I read the divisive Nashville statement coming out of evangelist Christianity. If you haven't heard of it, you can read it, but it is not for the faint of heart. In fact, doesn't it just seem these days that each week we are being pummeled by personal and public crises that require our response? But friends, we do not have to respond alone. I am so humbled to join you right now in this, our divine moment of wilderness. We will confront religious bullies together. Are you with me? We will confront systemic racial injustice together. We will face catastrophic storms together. Hand in hand, we will confront moving this religious home to a whole new location together. Are you with me? With revolutionary love pouring over us and unto us, baptizing us anew, giving us the moral courage throughout our weeks and our days to be less comfortable. It will be okay. I am so grateful to be your intern minister right now, to learn from the moral courage that I have already witnessed in you here, and to journey into our wilderness and confront it together again and again, armed with our UU faith that calls us to revolutionary love.